Halfland, an ahistorical prehistory. The Battle of Tintus Bridge. In the 177th year of the Common Reckoning, the Orc Gutnag mounted his great wolf and led an army from Midhaven, intent on taking and sacking the city of New Lixia. Lysonos, the king of New Lixia, hurriedly raised an army and marched out to face the Orcs, taking up a defensive position at Tintus Bridge, a few miles outside the city. Lysonos had around 500 men under his command. About half of these were armoured infantry, armed with swords and carrying large round shields. The remainder were unarmoured light infantry, split between archers and slingers. Lysonos had chosen his ground carefully. At this point, the road to New Lixia ran along a valley beside the deep and fast-flowing river Tintus, before crossing the river at Tintus Bridge. The river was not fordable, and this was the only crossing point that did not involve making a detour of many miles. Lysonos stationed his heavy infantry at the bridge. To their immediate right he placed the archers, and to the right of the archers the slingers. Thus, as the Orcs marched along the river approaching the bridge, they would find the far bank lined with light infantry, loosing arrows and hurling slingstones at them. Gutnag's force was the bigger, numbering over 600 armoured Orcan warriors. There were around 500 infantry. Half of these were armed with the fearsome Orcan bill. The remainder each carried a shield and a hand weapon. There were also more than 100 Orcs mounted on great wolves. The Orcs approached the bridge in 2 columns. On the left of the army, nearest the river, Gutnag placed the Orcs carrying shields. To their right marched a second column, with Gutnag at its head, consisting of those Orcs bearing bills. The Wolf Riders brought up the rear. As the Orcan advance reached a point opposite the New Lixian slingers, a horizontal hailstorm of slingshot clattered into the lead group of shield-bearing Orcs, which panicked and scattered. The Orcan advance was disrupted. Gutnag and the leading party of Orcan bills pressed on, but the Orcan bills at the rear of the column hesitated, blocking the advance of the Wolf Riders behind them. Cursing their comrades' cowardice, the Wolf Riders pushed through the reluctant Bill Orcs, causing yet more confusion. Gutnag and the Orcs around him continued to advance toward the bridge, closely followed by the Wolf Riders and a party of shield-bearing Orcs. The Orcs had now moved within range of the New Lixian archers, who loosed clouds of stinging arrows into their ranks. But, despite mounting casualties, Gutnag's presence maintained the discipline of the Orcs around him, driving them ever forward. Not so the shield-bearing Orcs that were following behind Gutnag. They too were liberally lashed with slingshot, which broke their formation into pieces. Gutnag and his Bill Orcs were now nearing the bridge, with the Wolf Riders close on his heels. Behind them was a scene of chaos, slave masters shouting and swearing, administering their whips with abandon, trying to reassemble the shattered formation of shield Orcs. But at the back of the Orcan column, order had been restored, and the rearmost groups of Orcs resumed their advance. At the head of the column, the arrows of the New Lixian archers continued to inflict casualties upon the fast-dwindling lead group of Orcs. But fear of Gutnag drove the survivors on, and now the first Orcs reached Tintus Bridge. Lysonos reacted immediately. As the orcs set foot on the bridge, they were charged by the new Lixian heavy infantry. Yet more orcs fell, but, for the moment, the last few remaining managed to maintain a toehold upon the bridge, using the superior reach of their orcan bills to hold the new Lixian swordsmen at bay. Behind Gutnag, the Wolf Riders had continued their advance. Gutnag rode back to them, urging them to make haste. Orcan trumpets blared, and the Wolf Riders charged forward. The charge came too late to save the orcs on the bridge. Surrounded and outnumbered, they succumbed to the new Lixian swords. But the new Lixian heavy infantry had no time to savour their victory. Even at that moment, the Wolf Riders fell upon them. The onslaught was ferocious, armoured Wolf Riders brutally hacking at new Lixian heads, while their snarling steeds attempted to sink their fangs into new Lixian throats. But although they were hard pressed, the new Lixians held firm. Behind the Wolf Riders, the slave masters had succeeded in rounding up the reluctant shield orcs and driving them forward. Now they joined the fight. Gradually, new Lixian casualties mounted, and the orcs forced their way onto the bridge, pushing the new Lixians back. And now the orcs at the rear were coming forward, passing the new Lixian slingers, who pelted them with slingshot. But this time the orcs held their nerve and pushed on, next passing the new Lixian archers, advancing through an arrow storm, doggedly heading toward the melee on the bridge. And the orcs at the bridge were in need of reinforcements, as once again the new Lixian swordsmen drove them back. Now the whole orcan army had congregated at the bridge, trying to force a passage across it. The new Lixian archers loosed their last arrows and stepped back, allowing the slingers to take their place. Slingshot hissed into the heaving horde of orcs, but undeterred, the orcs pressed on, and once again the new Lixian swordsmen were driven back. It cost them dear, but slowly and remorselessly the orcs ground their bloody way across the bridge. Lysonos threw the last of his heavy infantry into the fight, hoping to hold the orcs for long enough to allow his light infantry to get clear. They had done their work, and he wanted to preserve them to fight another day. The archers marched from the field in good order. Lysonos and a group of his heavy infantry fell back from the bridge to cover the archers' retreat, leaving a small rearguard to hold the orcs on the bridge for as long as possible, to give the slingers time to get away. The orcs surged forward, overwhelming the new Lixian rearguard. The slingers turned and ran. The leading orcs crossed the bridge, forming a defensive line, holding position while the rest of the orcan host came across to join them. Lysonos and his surviving infantry formed a shield wall, facing the orcan line, but slowly backing away from it. And then, once the slingers were clear and Lysonos considered that the gap he had opened provided a sufficient head start, he and the surviving heavy infantry turned and ran down the road, back toward the city. Gutnag did not pursue them. His force had suffered heavy casualties. His infantry were too slow to catch the new Lixians, and most of his wolf riders had not yet crossed the river. Reluctantly, he watched the new Lixians recede down the road. He would have to finish them another day. Thus ended the Battle of Tintus Bridge.